Chapter 1888. Long Sai, do you have any news of Yin Yanli? Gu Shijie was still thinking of the prince since he was the first friend she met in the upper bound. Throughout these 200 years, Yin Yanli had always been beside her. Whenever she went to the upper bound to run errands, he would always be there when she needed him, helping her without complaint. Long Sai heaved a sigh. No. He paused momentarily before continuing. Shijie, I have a feeling that he has met an unfortunate fate. It was weird for a prince to disappear without reason for so long. Under such circumstance, it was most likely that he had met trouble. Gu Shijie closed her eyes for a second. He is still alive. Firmament Stone told her that the prince was still alive. It was only uncertain of his location. Long Sai was puzzled. Shijie, how do you know? I have my ways. All I know is that he is still alive. Long Sai swirled his cup of tea and gave off a soft sigh. If he is alive but not seen, then there are two possibilities. He is trapped and unable to free himself, or he has lost his memories, forgetting that he was once Prince Yin Yanli. I hope that he had lost his memories because that way, he will not suffer as much. Supposing he has been trapped, once he manages to escape, seeing his family destroyed would be too much for him to handle. Gu Shijie sipped her tea and was preoccupied with the question as well. She suddenly remembered something. What about his sister? Long Sai responded. His sister still lives in the old princess palace. She has been living quite a good life, not much different from how she used to live. Gu Shijie was pleased with that answer. She knew that the princess was called Yin Yanhui. She was 2 years older than Yin Yanli. Bound by blood, the pair of siblings had a close-knit relationship. Yin Yanhui was a genius at spells, and her external abilities are much greater than Yin Yanli's. She was already a mighty immortal when they met. She spent most of her time learning spells, and tends to train alone. She would also seldom go outdoors and meet people. A few years ago, Gu Shijie bumped into her while with Yin Yanli. The princess was not good at socializing and seemed rather naive. When chatting with others, you would only hear her talking about spells. You could say that she was a nerd. During that time, her parents were still around. She was carefree and could be oblivious to her surroundings. However, now that her family members were missing or dead, could she still be so ignorant? Gu Shijie subconsciously shook her head. She did not understand people who were solely engrossed in books. She did not want to either. In fact, Gu Shijie was hardly interested in anything lately. She only asked for the sake of Yin Yanli. Learning that she was still living her life under good conditions had eased some of Gu Shijie's worries. Gu Shijie went on to ask about the daughter of the mighty immortal, Princess Ya. It was obvious that Long Sai was upset at the mentioning of her name. He just said with nonchalance, when the mighty immortal was defeated that year, she was vocal in severing ties with her own father. Over the past couple of days, she has been latching onto the might immortal Yi. He was rather annoyed and did not even allow her to enter the palace. The only reason he did not kick her out was because of their past relationship. Essentially, she had turned into a joke for all 3 bounds, but still remained unabashed. The two continued to chatter over their meal, and gradually the night fell. Suddenly, a streak of colored light went up to the sky, followed by more lights. It was a vivid scene. Long Sai got up. Shijie, there are fireworks to celebrate the ascendance of a new mighty immortal. Let's have a look. Chapter 1889. Gu Shijie and Long Sai arrived at the streets. Immortals thronged the streets. It was crowded but rather merry. This time, Gu Shijie did not dress up to hide her identity. She did not even put on a mask. She wore a blue dress and a silvery white cape. Although she donned such a simple outfit, she still looked outstanding. Many could not keep their eyes off her. Of course, Long Sai was exceptional as well. He was dressed in white. As he stood beside Gu Shijie, they looked great together. Almost everyone who passed them could not help but stare a little. Long Sai's fame had been built up recently. On the streets, many would greet him. Of course, while greeting him, their gaze lingered on Gu Shijie. Gu Shijie was not shy, but she did not want there to be any misunderstandings. Hence, she used a spell to change her facial features, making it seem more normal instead. With that, Long Sai's friends would not have their gazes linger on her. Instead, they would joke around. Commander Long, bringing your maidservant out? Long Sai was obviously appalled by their greeting. No, she is my friend. Not my maidservant. The blue dress Gu Shijie was wearing was similar to what the junior immortals were wearing. Maidservants would usually dress up this way. Hence, it was just normal for there to be misunderstandings. The people who greeted Long Sai examined Gu Shijie and looked as if they never thought Long Sai would befriend such a junior immortal. They would laugh while uttering, "It was a misunderstanding," and then walk away. Shijie, how about you can change into something else? I do not want them to misunderstand you. Gu Shijie was in a happy-go-lucky mood. No need, it's all right. Long Sai did not want to push her, and just continued the journey. They were roaming about, and suddenly a man jumped out of nowhere. Commander Long. The voice was firm. It was a woman in white. Gu Shijie felt that it was too easy to determine one's abilities over there, simply by judging their clothes. The lady must be quite similar to Long Sai's level, a senior immortal. Senior immortal Yuan. Long Sai frowned slightly, but still greeted her. Commander Long. You are so insincere. I just invited you over to view the fireworks, and you said you were busy. But now you have come by yourself, and even brought along a maidservant. The lady was pretty and possessed a rather unique style. Long Sai was rather formal. I really had something to do. And this is my good friend, not my maidservant. Friend. The lady raised her eyebrows. She scanned through Gu Shijie and twitched her lips. Commander Long, since when have you befriended a junior immortal? Her gaze towards Gu Shijie had a sense of contempt. Long Sai furrowed his brow into a tight knot. She is not a junior immortal. She is a middle immortal. Please do not guess. Not a junior immortal? The lady raised her eyebrows high this time. She is wearing the clothing of a junior immortal. You judge others by their appearance. I hope you become blind one day. A childlike voice could be heard. Gu Shijie was stunned for a while. As she followed the sound, she saw a child on the back of a person's neck, moving through the crowd and staring them down from above. To be exact, he was staring at the middle immortal. Gu Shijie was good at recognizing him. And the child had an outstanding appearance as well. It was Shen Yanma, the son of the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. Chapter 1890. The kid was wearing a silver-colored robe today. The robe was painted with a few light green bamboos. The small robe had no folds on it at all, and looked very tidy and neat. The man riding under him looked neat too. His hair was neatly combed, and his collar was tightly tied up. The clothes on his body were in a pale white shade, and it was also very neat. However, this man looked a bit anxious and seemed rather being emotionless. Long Sai had met with this little guy before, so he could definitely recognize him. He bowed to salute him. Your Highness. Shen Yanma was the son of the divine god. His identity was distinguished and noble, and it was technically higher than the status of the Emperor Immortal. Not forgetting that Long Sai was only a grade 5 officer in the Celestial Kingdom. Regardless of his rank, he still had to bow and salute this little prince. Senior Immortal Yuan was not qualified to attend the wedding of the Divine God and the Great Devil, so she had never met Shen Yanma. When Shen Yanma voiced up, she was quite angry. However, just when she was about to scold him, she saw Long Sai bow to him, so she was stunned. Which prince is he? Long Sai was about to explain, but Shen Yanma interrupted. It has nothing to do with you. His tongue was sharp, but he still sounded cute. Senior Immortal Yuan was stunned by his answer. I am just curious. She looked furious at the moment. I don't care which prince you are. Although you are just a kid, you are rather rude. I wonder if your parents have taught you any manners. Generally, a prince came from a royal family. However, the Yun's royal family had been taken over by the new Emperor Immortal Yi Tianli. Yi Tianli was an orphan and had no relatives. He was not even married, so this little prince should not be the relative of the new emperor. He could only be the relatives of the old emperor. Yi Tianli was very kind to the relatives of the old emperor, and still allowed them to be addressed with high regard. Shen Yanma, who was now standing in front of her, had a kind of noble aura. This kind of aura could only be present if he came from a noble family. Therefore, she speculated in her heart, and felt that Shen Yanma was from the old royal family. Even though the old royal family was still being greeted with respect, they had no actual power. In fact, sometimes even their servants would bully them. Senior Immortal Yuan had never lifted her head in front of the old royal family. When she saw them, she would have to kneel from far away, and she did not even have the qualification to look up. Now that the old royal family was in trouble, she naturally wanted to revenge. Thus, when she saw Shen Yanma, she wanted to give him a lesson. Gu Shijiu had also wanted to give Senior Immortal Yuan a lesson for looking down on people. However, now that she had already caused problems for herself, she waited to watch the show. This little man was indeed very tricky. Senior Immortal Yuan was going to be very unfortunate in a while. Shen Nianmo's little feet were swaying in front of the person under him. His small hand held his chin, and his eyes widened as he smiled. There were 2 dimples on this cheek. How dare you to talk to me like this? Senior Immortal Yuan snorted. What is wrong talking to you like this? Do you think you can still act like how you did in the past? A prince who has lost his status still dares to act like a fox. You seem like you need a lesson from someone. Hump. Since you are just a kid, I will not blame you for it. With the few words you have just said, I can actually punish you to the point where even your parents cannot recognize you. Chapter 1891. Senior Immortal Yuan stared at the man who was carrying Shin Niamo. She felt a sense of pity for him and said, "Based on your attire, I think you are also a senior immortal. How can you let a kid ride on your head? You still act like a slave. Let me tell you, the Yin family is done. There is no benefit for you to follow him like this." The man's face was red, and his mouth was wide open. However, he had a hard time responding. Shin Niamo was not angry. The dimples on his face were getting deeper though. "So you think of me as a member of Yin family? No wonder you are so arrogant. It seems you are also blind." Senior Immortal Yuan was stunned. "So you are not from the Yin family? Who are you then?" Shin Yanma laughed. "Why don't you guess?" Senior Immortal Yuan looked at Long Sai for clues. Long Sai bit his lips and remained silent. Senior Immortal Yuan looked at Shin Yanma again, and suddenly she realized something. She stepped back, and her face looked horrified. Shin Yanma looked at Gu Shijiu and Long Sai. A smile appeared on his face for a moment while he pointed his finger to Senior Immortal Yuan. "Today, I am not going to use my identity to deal with you. You don't have to worry about who I am. If you can beat me, I will not punish you. In fact, I will still ask Long Sai to accompany you to watch the fireworks at night. No one can bother 2 of you." Long Sai never expected that he would be put on the spot, and became part of the deal. He added, "Your Highness." Shin Yanma put his finger on his lips and hinted him to stop talking. Long Sai naturally had to shut up. "Do you agree or disagree?" Shin Yanma stared at Senior Immortal Yuan with a pair of big eyes. Senior Immortal Yuan's face was slightly red. She really liked Long Sai, and also wanted to get Long Sai to accompany her to watch the fireworks. However, Long Sai was not interested in her, and always rejected her invites. She took a glance at the Gu Shijiu, who stood beside Long Sai. She felt very jealous watching them standing side by side. Although she did not know the identity of Shen Yanma, she thought that a 4 or 5-year-old kid should not be too difficult to handle. She could teach this kid a lesson as well. Senior Immortal Yuan was a famous female warrior after all. She was almost as skillful as Long Sai. Therefore, she asked, "Will you hold up your end of the deal?" "Of course," Shin Yanma interrupted her. "But if you lose, you must give this lady 3 kowtows, crawl on the floor around her 3 rounds, and admit that you look down on people like a dog." His little finger was pointing at Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu raised her eyebrows. Was this little man trying to avenge her? Did he not recognize her? If he did, he would know that she was the one who threw a bouquet on his head. Since Senior Immortal Yuan was quite confident that she could win, so she also committed to holding up her end of the deal. "I did not really want to fight with a little kid like you and spoil my reputation. However, you are too arrogant, so I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your parents. To be fair, I will let you make 3 moves first." Before anything started, she suddenly thought of something. "Don't you want to let your servant fight on behalf of you? Or you are trying to partner with him to fight with me?" Shen Yanma laughed his head off. No, I won't. I will fight with you alone, and will not ask for any help. He then patted the man under him with his little hand. Stand here. If you dare to run away, I will make you suffer to death. The man nodded continuously. Chapter 1892. Shen Yanma was satisfied and patted the man's head. Good. By the way, your hair is so messy. Quickly go and comb it. Otherwise, I will not feel comfortable looking at it. That man worried. Okay. Gu Shijiu felt like laughing. This little boy was too fussy. It seems he had an obsession with cleanliness as well as obsessive-compulsive disorder. From her perspective, the man's hair was fine. She looked at Shen Yanma again. She always felt that this little boy looked like someone she knew, but she could not remember who that person was at that moment. The scene here naturally alerted many people on the street. They came and surrounded them. The people here obviously could recognize Senior Immortal Yuan. At this moment, they saw her dealing with a little boy, which was very strange. Hence, more onlookers suddenly appeared. At this moment, Senior Immortal Yuan was afraid that everyone would talk bad about her for bullying a little kid. So she shouted, Kid, I don't want to fight with you. We can overlook this as long as you bow and apologize to me. Shen Yanma leaped down from his servant's head, and colorful lights were seen from his palm. Stop talking. Let's fight. And so the battle began. Some of the onlookers were trying to figure out what happened, so those that were in front started to explain to those behind them. Soon, many people's eyes were focused on Gu Shijiu and Longsai, because both of them were the root cause of this fight. Unfortunately, these two people started to look bad as they seemed to allow a little kid to sort things out for them. Most of the people here did not recognize Shen Yanma. However, they knew that Senior Immortal Yuan was a very capable fighter. She was ruthless when she fought and never showed mercy. She even got a nickname, Cruel Guanyin. Some of the people present were ready to save the kid. They were waiting with sleeves lifted. If the kid lost the fight, they would quickly go and save him so that he would not be killed. Initially, no one believed that Shen Yanma stood a chance. But after 15 minutes, everyone began to sympathize with Senior Immortal Yuan. She was badly beaten. Some of her hair had been sliced off, while half of her face was purple due to numerous blows, and she was bleeding badly from her mouth. Senior Immortal Yuan regretted to let Shen Yanma start with 3 moves. After the second kick by Shen Yanma, her ribs were almost broken, so she began to fight back before his third move. She was always fierce when she fought. However, she struggled with Shen Yanma. She was definitely on the receiving end. The moves used by Shen Yanma were very practical and extremely fast. He did not waste any time showboating. The people in the crowd with low skills could not even see how Shen Yanma attacked. They saw shadows that spun around Senior Immortal Yuan to the point where even they felt dizzy. Gu Shijiu was now a master of martial arts, so she naturally could see the skills of Shen Ninamo. She was quite impressed. The little man was a genius. He was so young but able to make such a complicated skill look so easy. This fight did not last for too long. It ended in less than half an hour, and Senior Immortal Yuan had been defeated. A few of her ribs were broken, most of her hair was missing, and her entire face was bruised. 2 of her eyes had been swollen. She might be unrecognizable now. She could not get up from the ground but stared at Shen Yanma in disbelief. Who are you? Shen Yanma patted his little hands together to signal that the job was done. You don't have to know. You are defeated, so you should be punished. Chapter 1893. Senior Immortal Yuan remained silent. The punishment was too shameful. She never imagined that she could be more embarrassed than how she felt at the moment. She tried to get back onto her feet and deliberately confused the people. Oh yeah, are you saying that I should apologize to this lady? Well, I apologize. Is that okay? Shen Yanma folded his arms. You have to give 3 kowtows and admit your mistake. After that, you still need to crawl on the ground for 3 rounds and admit that you look down on people. I have never said so. You must remember it wrong. She denied it. She stood up and stepped back, trying to escape from the scene. However, she almost crashed into someone while walking backward. She quickly looked back and saw Gu Zijia's face. She was shocked. She just thought that Gu Shijie was standing a few meters away. When did she come behind her? She did not even notice it. Gu Shijie did not talk much with her. She took out a recorder spell and switched it on. The conversation between the two of them just now was broadcasted, and all the onlooker could listen to it clearly. Gu Zijie's action was worse than slapping Senior Immortal Yuan in the face. She was furious. You are just a junior immortal. You are not qualified for a kowtow. I am not going to honor it. What can you do? Among the onlookers, there were friends of Senior Immortal Yuan, and some of them were quite good at martial arts. They also pleaded for Senior Immortal Yuan, and asked Shin Nianma to give mercy. They even claimed that although it was not appropriate for Senior Immortal Yuan to talk like this, she was merely stating facts. A junior immortal like Gu Shijie who stood beside Long Sai could easily make people misunderstand that she was a servant. These people surrounded Senior Immortal Yuan, and it gave her some required confidence. She stared at Shin Nianma and fought back. This kid is too wicked. Even if he has a distinct identity and is a prince of a royal family, he should not ride on a senior immortal, right? He just rode on the shoulders of a senior immortal, and behaved very arrogantly. In this continent, it was indeed an insult to ride on someone's shoulders. Senior Immortal Yuan vividly described how Shin Nianmo rode on the shoulders of a man and storied the injustice. At this moment, she acted as a just messenger and sharply criticized the incident. If this senior immortal is your servant, you can let him carry you. However, you actually rode on him and didn't even treat him as a human. The Emperor Immortal today hates people who mistreat servants. And your servant is a senior immortal. She pulled the servant over. Don't be afraid of him. Even if he has a higher status, it cannot be higher than the Emperor Immortal. You are a senior immortal. Why would you want to be his servant? You, Shin Nianma watched her quietly all the while and finally interrupted. He is not my servant. Shin Nianma then signaled the senior immortal over with his little hand. Come on, explain to them. The man was apparently afraid of him. He looked at him, and then looked at the other people. He suddenly kneeled down in front of Shin Nianma. Your Highness, I am sinful. When I met your Highness, I was attracted by your beautiful face and wanted to kidnap your Highness. Your Highness caught me and allowed me to be your servant. It's all under my own willingness to repay for my sin. The onlookers were speechless. Senior Immortal Yuan was speechless too. So this man was a kidnapper who wanted to abduct the kid. However, he never expected that this kid would catch him, and decided to pay for his sin. This matter was worse than treating a senior immortal as a servant. Chapter 1894. Someone in the crowd recognized that this man was a skilled kidnapper. He is Prince Fenglang. Prince Fenglang, a well-known kidnapper in the Saha world, specialized in abducting immortal children. He was a wanted man in the Saha world with his portrait pasted on the walls of many corners. However, this man was very skilled and always changed his appearance, making him unrecognizable. The only thing he could not change was his voice sounded very strange. Hence, why he hardly spoke and always acted dumb. He had apparently suffered a lot of under Shin Nianma, so he did not even dare to escape. When the story developed to this moment, no one wanted to seek justice for Prince Fenglang anymore. Instead, countless people were staring at Shin Nianma, wondering what had he done, and about his true identity. Who was this kid who could catch Prince Fenglang to the point where he did not even dare to escape? Senior Immortal Yuan was also stunned. She involuntarily took 2 steps back. Well, I did not recognize that this person is a kidnapper. However, I am also trying to get justice. She glanced at Gu Shijie again. Although it was my mistake, I think it is sufficient for me to apologize. If I kowtow to her, I am afraid that she would not deserve it. Gu Shijie usually did not like to talk much, so at this moment, she did not plan to say too much either. She merely raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, how can a person like this be a senior immortal? Anyway, I don't need someone like you to give me a kowtow. You are not qualified. As she finished speaking, she lifted her sleeve and a colorful light emerged and covered Senior Immortal Yuan. Senior Immortal Yuan screamed momentarily, and the light carried her up into the sky. Everyone was stunned. This was not a skill that could be issued by a junior immortal. Even a higher-ranked person might not be able to do it. Who was she? How could she have such a strong skill? Numerous eyes fell on Gu Shijie, but Gu Shijie was too lazy to entertain them. She casually said to Long Sai, "Instructor Long, let's go." She then turned and was about to go, but her sleeve was tugged by a small hand. "Big sister, wait." Gu Shijie looked down at the little hand that was pulling her sleeve. She paused and asked, "Prince Nianma, do you have anything else?" It turned out he was the son of the divine god and the great devil. Everyone was shocked and quickly kneeled and bowed to him. The divine god and the great devil were the most influential people in this continent. The identity of their child was definitely the noblest one. It was even nobler than the emperor immortal. Shin Nianma slightly frowned. The reason why he did not want to reveal his identity was that these people were too troublesome. They liked to kneel and bow to him, which brought trouble to him. He preferred to have a carefree life. His eyes looked at Gu Shijie in a rather strange manner. He never liked any woman other than his mother. However, the woman in front of him gave him a very similar feeling. He could not bear to see her being insulted and wanted to help her. He even felt uncomfortable when he saw her stand beside Long Sai. He was still young and did not understand this strange feeling. Subconsciously, he just wanted to split Gu Shijie and Long Sai. When he saw Gu Shijie looking at him, he blinked. "Elder sister, you can actually recognize me, that's great. I got lost. Can you send me home?" Chapter 1895. His big eyes were extraordinarily pleasing to observe. It made people could not bear to refuse him. Gu Shijie was speechless. How could such a strong and intelligent kid not recognize the way back home? How could it be? He seemed to understand the doubts in Gu Zijie's eyes. Shin Nianma continued and said, "I have a poor sense of direction." His little face blushed as if he was too embarrassed to say it sooner. Long Sai could not help but interrupt. "I can send your highness back," Shin Nianma responded with a stern face. "Commander Long, I have another task to assign to you." His finger was pointed at Prince Fenglang. "I will hand over this kidnapper to you." Prince Fenglang almost burst out in tears at this point. "Your Highness, you said that you would let me go alive." Shin Nianma answered immediately. "I have never wanted to take your life. Would you prefer to follow me?" Prince Fenglang changed his mind and immediately leaped to the side of Long Sai. He fearfully remarked, "Commander Long, please take me to the cops. I will never escape." Long Sai was speechless. Since this man had been a wanted man for so many years, Long Sai naturally did not dare to delay. Since the show had ended, the onlookers also dismissed and went away. Shin Nianma pulled the corner of Gu Zijie's dress again. "Elder sister, let's go." Gu Shijie looked at him. "You really don't recognize the way back home?" Shin Nianma nodded. "Really? Who could reject this kid?" Gu Shijie naturally could not reject either. Besides, she always had a strange feeling about this kid. Her eyes flashed slightly, and suddenly she leaned over and picked him up. "Well, I will send you home then." Shin Nianma was somewhat stiff. In fact, he never liked to be carried. Subconsciously, he did not want to be too close to other people. However, when Gu Shijie carried him, there was a kind of sorrow feeling that emerged in his little heart. It was definitely a first for him. He did not know why there was such a feeling. When Gu Shijie carried him, her heart pumped faster too. She felt warm when she hugged him in her arms. He had a faint aroma on his body, which gave her a very familiar feeling. She used to look for this fragrance crazily, but could never find it. Finally, she found it now. However, instead of joy, there was also an inexplicable sorrow and grief in her heart. It was strange. How could she feel this way? If she did not know that she was a virgin, she would wonder if she had lost a child in the past. Although she could send him home quickly by teleporting, she subconsciously wanted to spend more time together. Therefore, she used cloud riding to send him home by riding on a cloud. "Baby, how old are you?" When they were on their way, Gu Shijie chatted with him casually. When she was in modern times, she always called such a small child as baby, so now she subconsciously called Shin Nianma this way. But when she finished her sentence, she was slightly stunned in her heart. She had an inexplicable familiarity with the use of this phrase. Shin Yanma also seemed to stiffen up, but he still replied, I will be a year old in 3 months. My God. He was not even a year old yet. Gu Shizhou felt very strange. You grow up very quickly. You look around 4 or 5 years old. Shin Yanma blinked. Is it considered fast? Of course. A normal child at your age can't even walk yet. However, you can already defeat a senior immortal. Chapter 1896. Shin Niamo's eyes were slightly brighter. You are the first one who praised me for my growth spurt. My mother has always told me that I have not been growing, and was worried that I could never grow up. Gu Shizhou shook her head. Your mother is too demanding. I have observed the babies in the Celestial Kingdom. The babies that are at your age are still being carried by their mothers wherever they go. Suddenly, she stopped and looked at the little doll in her arms. She seemed to be carrying him. So was she now his mother? The skin of the kid in her arms was smooth and soft. He had a pair of watery eyes that were looking at her. He was certainly very adorable. Gu Zijia's heart was softened. How good if she had such a cute baby. She would definitely never put him down. She shook her head again. She did not even have a boyfriend now. How would it even be possible for her to get a baby? Shin Nianmo's eyes were like black crystals as he looked into her eyes. Do you really think so? The kid seemed to have very harsh parents. Perhaps that was why he lacked confidence. He was definitely a genius. Maybe parents had too high expectations from him. If the expectations on the kid were too high, it was easy for the kid to have a sense of inferiority, which was not good for the kid's growth. There was a little anger in Gu Zijia's heart just contemplating the matter. Baby, you are the best. Gu Shizhou praised him. I have never seen a baby who is better or smarter than you. Shin Nianma smiled with 2 small dimples on his cheek. Out of the blue, he held her with his 2 arms and kissed her on the cheek. Thank you. His lips were soft, slippery, and hot. Gu Zijia's body went stiff. She generally did not like to be close to people. However, there was something different about this kid. Actually, I can't blame my mother. My mother said that when my father was a year old, he had already grown into an adult and wandered around the 3 realms. Apparently, it was not long after that he became the divine god. However, I am now almost a year old, but I am still a kid. Gu Shizhou shook her head and said in her heart, that is because your father is a freak. If everyone was like Shin Nianma, this world be messed up. If the Divine Lord grew up so fast, he would not have a childhood. In fact, it was very pitiful. There was a dialogue that involuntarily took place in her brain. Baby, do you know why I like to call you baby? Because you are abnormal. No, because when I woke up, I was already an adult. I never had a childhood. I didn't even know what it was like to be cared for by my parents. Haha, then let me call you baby? To make up for your childhood imperfections. Yes. Come, let's be babies. Oh, you don't. This conversation that appeared in her mind was extremely abrupt. Gu Shizhou almost stumbled on the cloud while thinking about it. What happened to you? Shin Nianmo's small hand waved in front of her eyes. Why is your face red? No, nothing. Let's go. Gu Shizhou performed a few teleportations, and they arrived at the entrance of his palace in a brief moment. She then put him down. Little man, go home soon. If you go back late, your parents would be anxious. Well, I still have something to do, so I will leave first. Goodbye. She did not wait for the reply from Shin Nianma, and disappeared by teleportation. Shin Nianma was still in shock and wondered why she blushed. Chapter 1897. Apparently, Gu Shizhou looked more beautiful than his mother when she blushed. Although Gu Shizhou shielded her appearance, it did not work on Shin Nianma. It was strange. He usually did not pay attention to beautiful girls, but today he was a bit weird. When she called him baby, he also had a very special feeling. Was it because he had not been with his mother these days, so he missed his mother? As soon as Shin Nianma looked up, he saw his father leaning against the door and looking at him. Father. Shin Nianma ran toward Shinjuli and stretched out his hands. Father, hug me. Shinjuli held his arms and looked at him. Acting cute again? Shin Nianma dropped his arms almost instantly. Well, his father had rarely hugged him recently. I am still a small kid. It is normal for me to act cute. Shin Nianma blinked his eyes as if he remembered something. Father, can you call me baby? Shin Juli sized him up a few times. Are you sure you are not having a fever? The outcome was unsurprising to Shin Nianma. He then ran into the palace and looked for his mother. His mother, Ning Xiuema, was riding in the house. When she saw him running in, she sighed with relief. How can you run out to play without a servant? She raised her hand and picked him up. Did you meet an accident? Have you been mischievous? Shin Nianma shook his head. Everything is good. I am very obedient, and I did not misbehave. He lied in his mother's arms, and he could smell a nice scent from his mother's body, although he could sense that the fragrance on his mother was different from the lattice. It was warm in his mother's arms, and he felt secure. He pondered for a moment and asked, Mother, am I your baby? Ning Xiuema could not help but laugh. Of course. In the eyes of a mother, their children were always little babies. Then, can you call me baby? Shin Nianma looked forward to his mother's response. Ning Xiuema was speechless. What happened to this kid today? Nonetheless, she still obliged and called him baby. Shin Nianma shivered and took a leap down from her arms. He shook his head. The feeling was not quite right. He turned around and saw Shin Juli was standing at the doorway. Shin Nianma turned and ran away. Nianma is a bit strange today. Did something happen to him? Ning Xiuema was not at ease. She wanted to go out and see. Shin Juli took his wife's hand. Don't bother him. It doesn't matter if the kid is strange. After all, he is still young. Ning Xiuema frowned. He is not young anymore. When I was as big as him, I started to fight in the 3 realms. You were born as the divine god in nature, so you are naturally different. By the way, Nianma has not grown these few months. I am worried that he carries my gene and will not grow up in the next few thousand years. Don't worry, he won't. He has his growth trajectory. When he needs to grow up, he will naturally grow up. As it was already late in the night, Shin Juli held his wife's waist. Let's go and rest. Ning Suimo's face went red. Just as she was going to say something, the door slammed, and Shin Nianma ran in with a pillow. Mother. Chapter 1898. Ning Xiuema quickly pushed her husband's hand away. Nianma, what's wrong? Mother, I am going to sleep with you tonight. Ning Xiuema was slightly stunned. When she was about to say something, Shin Juli took a step forward and grabbed the little guy. Nianma, have you finished the coursework I assigned to you? It's been done some time ago. Shin Nianma was showing off. Shin Juli did not reply but just pulled him away and went out. Very good. Let me check the coursework. After 15 minutes, Shin Juli managed to go through all the work. His son had indeed finished all the work well and fast. He glanced at his son. This kid was sneaky. This coursework could only be done in 3 days without any disturbance, but he had finished it less than a day. Shin Nianma was a little bit sleepy, but still very proud. Father, is there anything wrong? If not, I am going to sleep. He turned and ran towards his parents' room. Shin Juli followed but did not say anything. Suddenly, Shin Nianma stumbled and fell down. When he stood up, he found that the scene in front of him had changed. He was now surrounded by misty fog and a lot of big stones. Shin Juli's ominous voice came from above. Since you have learned the theory very well, you are set to break this enchantment within 3 days, or you have no food to eat. Shin Nianma clenched his small fists. Oh no, he had been trapped by his father. He was caught without warning. Shin Nianma sat on a stone and rubbed his head. He had been trapped in the wizardry barrier several times. It was useless to beg for mercy. He could only rely on his own skills to break it. He was often thrown into the wizardry barrier to be trained, so he had become an expert in this area. Regardless of how complicated the wizardry barrier set by Shin Juli, he could quickly break it. Shin Nianma expected that it would be the same this time. He did not need 3 days. He was confident that he could escape in 1 day. However, after a long time and many attempts, he still failed. He finally realized that his father had set something more difficult for him this round. If the difficulty of the previous barrier was level 1, the current barrier was at least level 6. What was even worse was that the enchantment looked the same as before, so in the beginning, he used the old way to break it. As a result, after he applied all the techniques, he was still not able to break the wizardry barrier, but made it even thicker. The fog inside was getting thicker too. Gu Shijie still could not believe her feelings. Was it because she had been single for too long, so she was desperate for love? That could not be. She was not. In fact, she had never felt this way over the past years. It was strange. Sometimes she really could not believe that she was a virgin. Was it because she had already had intimacy with the former lord? Since the former lord had been immortalized, all his traces were erased, which included the evidence on her body. But that was impossible, right? The former lord was Huang Tu, and Huang Tu did not come to heaven. He should have, indeed, disappeared. What kind of person was he when he was still alive? It was quite frustrating that no one knew of him. Therefore, even if she wanted to know his character, she could not find anyone to ask. This person had entirely disappeared, and will never come back. Chapter 1899. Gu Shijie also could not believe that she had forgotten about him. It was frustrating. After she returned to the inn, she rested early. She had rarely missed a person in the past few years, and her feelings, in general, seemed to have faded. She could even treat her best friends in the same way. She would not be too happy when she met with her friends and would not be too sad during their separation. She was neither pleased by the external gains nor saddened by personal losses. However, today, she was provoked by Shen Yanma and missed that kid. Maybe that kid was too cute. Even someone cold like her also wanted to protect him. A thought suddenly emerged in her mind. That kid looked very special. Would he be the master of the heavenly law that she was looking for? It should not be, right? The master of heavenly law was a very distinguished person. He was even nobler than Shen Yanma. How could he be incarnated into such a small kid? All of a sudden, his beautiful little face floated in her mind. He was just too adorable. He could not be the reincarnation of the master of heavenly law. Even if he was, he should be someone with cold temperament, rather than a cute kid who asked for hugs. She put this thought back to the depths of her mind, and covered herself with a quilt and slept. Gu Shijie was busy for 2 more days, and went to visit a very good high-ranking hermit. The hermit was handsome and dressed in a fluttering white dress. This man had a cold temperament. It was said that when he utilized his power, he seemed to have Buddha light surrounding him. Gu Shijie had never missed such a high-ranking hermit, so she went to visit. Gu Zijie's main intention was to open the box, and she hoped that the man would be able to do so. However, the person worked hard all day and could not open it. It was clear that Gu Shijie was disappointed that he was not the one she was looking for. She had been wandering around the upper and lower bounds for more than 200 years. She had visited almost all the high-ranking people in both circles, but still did not find the person she was looking for. This master of heavenly law was really difficult to find. She suddenly thought of Shen Yanma, and recalled all his strange attributes. Was this kid really the reincarnation of heavenly law? However, the voice that occasionally spoke in her mind also told her that the box would have reacted if it met the real master. She had always carried the box, and until now, the box was like a sleeping stone and did not have any movement at all. Perhaps there was a problem with the box. Gu Shijie decided to go to the Fantion Palace to try her luck. She would like to visit the Divine God and asked about the master of heavenly law. It was said that the Divine God had lived in this world for thousands of years. He must know some secrets that were unknown to ordinary people. Perhaps she could pick up some information from him to help in her search. It was already late at night, but the moon in the upper bound was as prominent as a round table. Gu Shijie went directly to the Fantion Palace. She actually entered from the main entrance and requested a visit. Bai Zhe, the guardian at the door, told her that the Divine God had gone out. In fact, the couple was not at home, and so he asked her to come back later. It seems Gu Shijie went at the wrong time. She nodded and was about to leave. Chapter 1900. Just as Gu Shijie was about to leave, there was a movement in the Fantion Palace. A young man ran out and called Baizé. Baizé, do you think that young master is coming out soon? There are some movements over there. Baizé sighed with relief. Must be. The young master has been trapped in the wizardry barrier for 2 days and 2 nights. He must be breaking out soon. Tingxi quickly went to prepare some food. The young master has been trapped in the wizardry barrier for so long. He must be starving. Gu Shijio stood at the door of the Fantion Palace. She had heard of this palace before. The gate had a wizardry barrier. Without someone on the inside, no outsider could enter. Therefore, even though the door was open, she could not go in. She peeked in. It seemed that Shen Yanma was at home but was trapped in a wizardry barrier. According to the conversation between the two people earlier, it appeared that Shen Yanma was locked in the barrier since the day he went back from the party. Was it punishment for running around? Poor little guy. Should she go in and see him? Gu Shijio paused at the doorway, contemplating what she would do. She made up her mind and teleported into the palace. She decided that if she could go in successfully, she would visit that little man. If not, she would let him be. What she did not expect was, the wizardry barrier in the Fantion Palace did not affect her. She could go in without any hindrance. It was strange. Had the wizardry barrier of the Fantion Palace been taken away? The last time she came in, it was during the wedding of the mighty couple. At that time, guests were coming in and out, so it was not usual that the wizardry barrier would be taken down. However, the wizardry barrier in Fantion Palace should be back in order now. What happened? Gu Shijio was puzzled. She shook her head and decided to think about it later. After all, it was none of her business. She quickly wandered around the Fantion Palace. She was an expert in dismantling wizardry barriers, so she should be able to find Shen Yanma quickly and help him. There was indeed some movements in the wizardry barrier. Apparently, the person trapped inside was trying to break the barrier. Gu Shijio sat on a large rock and wanted to see how this little kid broke the barrier. She had noticed that this wizardry barrier was quite complicated. She was surprised. If Long Sai was trapped in this kind of wizardry barrier, he might need to spend almost 15 days to come out from it. This kid was still less than a year old. Could he really get out in 2 days? The sound of the rumble in the array was getting louder and louder. Finally, Gu Shijio heard a loud bang, and the wizardry barrier was torn apart. There was a small shadow that stood at the exit. Of course, it was Shen Yanma. He looked a little embarrassed, but his expression was smug. When he came out, he laughed. Finally, I have come out. When he turned his head, and he saw a person sitting far away from him. A black robe, a face with a green face and fangs, looked at him coldly. He was shocked and took a step back. Unfortunately, he stepped on a big rock and fell into the wizardry barrier again. That damn ghost face. The wizardry barrier had closed again. It left Shin Niamo's cursing. Gu Shijio was speechless. She did not mean it. She did not want to let Shin Niemo recognize that she was the big sister at the firework party. So she used the appearance that she usually used. She innocently rubbed her eyebrows. She thought about it and suddenly had a thought. Perhaps she should go in and take a look. Chapter 1901. As she was about to enter, she suddenly had a thought. Since the little guy had broken the barrier once, it should be easy for him to break the second time. Perhaps he would be able to break out again very quickly. Gu Shijio decided to go invisible. She did not want to scare him again when he came out. As usual, her instincts served her well. In less than an hour, Shen Yanma broke out from the wizardry barrier again. The little guy did not laugh loudly this time, but looked around and stayed alert. Fortunately, he did not see the mysterious ghost face again. He heaved a sigh of relief. He did not hurry to find food, but sorted out his little robe. The servant, Bai Zhe, ran over and smiled at him. Congratulations to my young master. You have succeeded once again. Tingxi has already prepared a lot of food for you. Do you want to eat them now? Shin Yanma was really hungry, but he had something more important thing to do. No, I have to take a bath first. He ran away quickly like the wind. Gu Shijio was now invisible in the air at this moment, and watching everything below. Fortunately, she hid quickly, or else this little man would discover her. It was okay for him to find her out. Her main concern was that he would fall into the wizardry barrier again. It seems her spell worked well. Shen Nianma could not see her, and neither could the mythological beast, Bai Zhe, that had practiced to stay in human form. This kid was weird. He was hungry and had no strength anymore, but still prioritized cleanliness. Why did he not use the cleaning technique? Had he not practiced this technique yet? Gu Shijie had always been rushing when she was in the upper bound. She had not fully understood the people in this world yet. As she was pondering, she realized that the jade on her waist suddenly issued a faint glow around it. She was stunned. She collected this jade in a cave. There were 8 mythological beasts carved on it. The jade was warm, and the appearance was strange. She remembered that she saw this jade on the Master of Heavenly Law in her dream. Therefore, she was quite happy to possess it. She had been wearing it these days, but there were no abnormalities seen until now. Was it because it had met its old master? Was little Nianma the Master of Heavenly Law? Her mind flashed through the appearance of the Master of Heavenly Law. Although the Master of Heavenly Law was wearing a mask in her dream, the eyes behind the mask were intense and enchanting. It would make people sink into it. She remembered that he carried a hint of evil charm and had a powerful aura around him. He looked really different from little Nianma. Shen Nianma bathed in a lake. His little body swam in the lake like a fish that had just escaped from a fishing net. His father was perhaps too cruel. The wizardry barrier was too complicated. There was yellow sand everywhere as the sand had blown around him in the desert for 2 days. He felt that his brain had been filled with sand as well. He spent a lot of effort inside the lake to make himself cleaner. Regardless of which situation, he always wanted to make himself look fresh and clean. Therefore, after escaping from the wizardry barrier, the first thing he wanted to do was to take a shower. He washed very carefully, and even his nails were cleaned up. He was a child, so when he bathed he was naturally naked. Anyway, there was no outsider in the Fantion Palace, and his parents had gone out. Only the 4 mythological beasts who had turned into humanoids were present. Hence, no one would bother him when he took a shower. He was busy bathing and suddenly felt something. His big eyes stared at the big tree beside the lake. Chapter 1902. The leaves swayed and danced in the breeze, blooming in vigor and exuberance. Shen Nianma could hardly notice that someone was hiding on the tree, though something did not feel quite right. He kept thinking that someone was there peeping. He thought about the disturbing mask of the mysterious man he encountered twice, and was immediately alarmed. What was his intention? Why was he always here in the Fantion Palace, where all outsiders were denied entry? He remained his composure and slowly stepped ashore. He put on his clothes and tidied himself. With a yawn he declared lazily, "I am famished. Time for some food." Slowly, he walked towards the direction of the tree. All of a sudden, he launched a strike towards the top of the tree. Half of the tree, which used to be covered in leaves and branches, was gone instantaneously, as a result of his powerful strike. However, he realized there was nothing hidden behind the leaves. Had he been overreacting due to his own anxiety? Shen Nianma shook his head to stop him from overthinking. While he was ready to depart, he turned and saw 2 figures standing not too far away. There were a man and a woman. It was a delight to the eye to see the couple, looking as beautiful as ever. Shen Nianma was taken by surprise. The couple was, apparently, his own parents. They were back. Shen Juli took a look at the tree that was almost bald now. Then, he turned to look at his son, who was standing under the tree. "Are you in a bad mood?" he asked politely. Shen Nianma shook his head and denied his father's assumption. No. His successful attempt at breaking through the wizardry barrier had been a great pleasure. "Did the tree offend you in any way?" Shen Juli continued. "Nope. Why did you empty its branches then?" Shen Nianma did not know what to answer. "Come, tell me honestly. Were you mad at me, so you had to vent your frustration at the innocent tree?" Shen Juli sounded gentle but was incorrect. Shen Nianma denied it immediately. "It was not like that. I thought that someone was there on the tree, trying to peep while I was taking a bath. I was only trying to hit the stalker." Shen Juli let out a laugh before answering. It sounds so reasonable that I almost believed it myself. Shin Nianma was speechless. His father disregarded his honesty so swiftly. Shin Juli continued. Little Nianma, did you know that I have planted and grown the tree myself? The tree is here to provide shade for your mother. Also, the tree has started to display some level of spirituality. Every time your mother comes into its shades, it will gather up its leaves to keep her cool. I appreciate its effort. Now that you have trimmed off almost the entire tree, tell me, what should I do with it now? Shin Nianma was utterly surprised. Was his father trying to bluff him? No one had ever told him about the powerful feature of the tree. Was his father trying to play tricks with him? Shin Nianma quickly asked for his mother's support instead. Mother, everything that I said was true. I really thought that someone was watching me in the dark. It must be the mysterious man with the disturbing mask. Ning Xuema chose to believe her son. Has anyone broken into the Fantian Palace? She asked her husband. Knowingly or unknowingly, Shin Juli swept his eyes across the sky and saw a small cloud. He then shook his head to reassure his wife. No outsider has even broken into the premise. Only people of our own side can come in. Ning Xuema trusted her husband entirely, so she safely assumed that her son was reacting for being held captive in the wizardry barrier over the past couple of days. He needed to release his frustration. Thus hitting the tree out of spite and ruining the Fantian Palace's surroundings was his goal. Although it was an understandable mistake to make, she still thought that her son's temper was wrong. He should not keep it as a habit by breaking things when he was moody. Therefore, she agreed with her husband to give him a punishment. Chapter 1903. A day later, he was trapped in another wizardry barrier. Only this time it came with an increased level of difficulty. Shin Nianma had been indulging in good food the day before to replenish his physical strength, before he was essentially locked up again. The current wizardry barrier was more robust. Due to Shin Nianma's intense protest, Shin Juli did not send him into a wizardry barrier in the desert. He complained that he would have languished from lack of water and too much sun. So his father sent him into another wizardry barrier in the rainforest instead, a place filled with sufficient water sources. The amount of water supply in the rainforest was indeed plentiful. There would be a torrential downpour every 1 or 2 hours. The floor had turned into mud. The combination of hot and humid weather frustrated him. He could not utilize his spiritual power within the wizardry barrier. In the primitive rainforest, ferocious beasts appeared relentlessly. After rounds and rounds of heavy rain, he was completely soaked like a drowned rat. He could not even use his spiritual power to dry up his clothes instantly. Moreover, he had to run for his life tirelessly to escape from the beasts. Gu Shijiao had not left the Fantian Palace, so she had clearly seen what happened. The Divine Lord was eager to punish his son with no mercy shown. The little boy must have acquired his extraordinary kung fu from his father's abnormal ways of teaching. For the past 2 days, she took her time to visit Shin Nianmo's study room and bedroom secretly. To her surprise, she realized that the boy had a great habit of putting everything in perfect order. He had even arranged the books according to their height from the shortest to the tallest. Also, the boy had a keen eye for beauty. The aesthetics in his study room and bedroom clearly reflected his simple and elegant taste. He had even clipped and carved his flowers with impressive emphasis, better than anyone who had formally learned how to do so. The little boy was amazing, but not enough to impress his father. Was he too ambitious to see his child succeed in life? Or was he trying to make him the best? If she were to have a son like Shin Nianma, she would not have the heart to put her son through all that trouble. She could be, nonetheless, the reason behind the little boy's confinement in the wizardry barrier. She had indeed peeped at the little boy while he was taking his bath. She was only trying to get closer to the little boy to see if the jade would light up again. The result was rather disappointing. The jade did not light up, but that was probably also due to the distance. When Shin Nianma stepped ashore, she had quickly lunged into the sky to avert suspicion. She was lucky that she did. Otherwise, the boy's strike would definitely have hit her. Gu Shijiao was more or less guilty, so she studied the wizardry barrier and found out that the barrier would not let the insiders out, but would let the outsiders in. She could easily make her way into the barrier. The moment Gu Shijie stepped into the barrier, she was cautious enough to realize the Divine Lord's reckless mistake. Wouldn't he be worried that someone else might sneak into the barrier and attack his beloved son? The wizardry barrier was more complicated than she had thought it would be. It was like a huge leap into a primitive jungle. There was not a path to trek, while bushes of thorns crept all over the ground. From the depths of the jungle, she could hear deep, prolonged cries of the beasts. It was rather creepy, with an air of mystery and gloom. The jungle was covered in a thick fog. If a normal person were to stand in the fog, it would be difficult even for him or her to see who was standing right opposite them. Even for someone as powerful as Gu Shijie, there was a limitation for her vision as well. She could only see clearly within a few miles, so she was unsure how vast the jungle actually was. Chapter 1904. The setting up of a wizardry barrier was usually like this. It could be infinite and boundless, but once the key was found to decipher the barrier, it could be infinitely small. So small that one could easily step out of it. The jungle hosted many ferocious beasts. A few of them immediately surrounded Gu Shijie. But with her extraordinary kung fu, she could easily defend herself. With only a few moves, all the beasts were defeated. After the fight, she was surprised that the beasts were all of the low ranks. Most of them were roughly at level 5. It was safe to assume that the Divine Lord was worried that the ferocious beasts might harm his son. So he chose to insert the ones of a lower rank into the wizardry barrier. Little Niamo's kung fu was approaching the level of a golden immortal. Would these lousy beasts be incompetent for his level? It did not seem much like the Divine Lord's style. Bewildered, she tried to pay closer attention to her surrounding, but could not hear any roaring in the distance. The little boy must have hidden well. There was an abundance of ferocious beasts in the jungle. Gu Shijie would bump into a few beasts even in a short walk. Reluctant to fight, she chose to avoid as many of them as she could. She knew how to teleport, so these beasts could hardly get close even though they had seen her. The place reminded her of the dark forest, and Gu Shijie recalled her first experience in the dark forest with a narrow escape from death. She could still remember how she was trying to stay alive. Every second was a struggle of life and death. All of a sudden, a man came into her vision. She could roughly remember the figure of the man in the dark forest, fighting along with her. However, she could not recall his identity no matter how hard she tried. She took a few turns in the jungle. From a distance, she could hear something strange, like someone was knocking the rocks. She followed the sound and finally found Shin Nianma. The little boy seemed rather messy. His hair was thoroughly soaked, and so were his clothes. Beside him, there was a pile of wet firewood and some meat. There he squatted, trying hard to start a fire. Obviously, he was unsure of the correct method, so he was making a lot of noise but with no result to show for it. Gu Shijie was confused. It was merely an easy matter if he chose to use the spell. The little boy looked as though he was seeking the challenge to live in the open wild. Was it possible that he could not utilize his spells at all? Gu Shijie watched excitedly from the top of the tree for a while. Finally, a sense of soft-heartedness filled her heart. "I can help you light the fire, but you will have to share half of the meat with me," she offered. Shin Nianma was obviously shocked. He trembled, and the rocks slipped from his hands. The small flame that he had worked on for so long died out immediately. He raised his head and found her. His eyes narrowed with an immediate concern. Quickly, he rose and took a careful step backward. "Who are you? Why have you been following me?" Gu Shijie was covered entirely in black, and an awfully disturbing mask with a fiery red face. Her attire completely concealed her gender. Gu Shijie was expecting his reaction, so she folded her arms and answered casually, "A passerby." How could one pass by the Fantion Palace? Was Fantion Palace like a marketplace? Shan Nianma clearly rejected the lousy excuse, so he took another careful step in retreat, and treated her with defensive hostility. Apparently, he thought that she was a bad person who was here to abduct him. Gu Shijie smiled gently, and presented a pile of mushroom-shaped wood that was used to ignite a fire. She flicked the wood in front of him and tempted him. "Can you see this? This is a fire-igniting wood that can be used to store fire. With this, you will never have to strike fire from flint. Chapter 1905. As she was talking, she also blew some air on the wood to light up the fire. Shin Nianma was convinced, so he accepted her offer. He huddled around the fire, and shared half of the meat with Gu Shijio. As for the other half, he arranged the meat accordingly. Then he threaded the meat onto the skewers and grilled over the gentle fire. Gu Shijio watched as his obsessive-compulsive behavior was displayed by him cutting the meat into equal sizes. It was even neater than those cut by machines. She could not help but laugh at him. It was common if he had done all this with a spell, but this time he obviously did it all by himself, manually with a knife. The child had a strong behavioral pattern governed by compulsion. She took a look at his hair and his clothes. He had tried his best to look his best, given the circumstances. He would fall sick easily if his hair and clothes remained soaking wet. Therefore, Gu Shijio raised her arm and performed the cleaning spell for him. Instantly his hair and clothes became dry. Shin Nianma was surprised by her sudden offer of assistance. When he realized that his hair and clothes were all clean and dry, he gave Gu Shijio an approving look and said, "Your spell is not bad." If she could perform the spell within the wizardry barrier by breaking his father's preset suppression for all spiritual power, she must be someone quite powerful. Gu Shijio said nothing further, and only answered with a smile. Shen Nianma started to get her into more conversations. He tried to get to know more about the mysterious person utilizing devious questioning. The little boy was rather talkative. Nonchalantly, she sat on the tree, trying to tease him. She would like to see how he would react when he was offended. Therefore, she remained quiet throughout all his questions, pretending to be cool. Shin Nianma was famished. When one of the skewers was finally done, he quickly picked it up and was ready to feast, but before the food even touched his lips, he was surprised to find that the meat on the skewer was already gone. He almost bit the stick. Out of anger, he turned his eyes toward Gu Shijio and saw her enjoying the meat that he had just grilled. Gu Shijio was still wearing a mask, so Shin Nianma could hardly see her true face. Shin Nianma was furious at what she had done. Moreover, he was extremely hungry. He rushed at her and shouted, "Give me back my food!" He had to get his food back, as he already shared half of the meat for her to grill. Gu Shijio remained her composure and swiftly retreated about a mile to another tree. There she lay lazily. "You are going back on your words." Shin Nianma clenched his fists in anger. Gu Shijio was very delighted to see his face burning with indignation. But she managed to suppress her laughter. "You are right. I only said that I would offer the firewood in exchange for half of the portion of the meat. I did not say that I would not take the grilled meat from you," she continued in a demanding tone. "I challenge you to take it back if you can." She was already in very close proximity with the little boy, but the jade did not react at all. Was the last reaction only a coincidence? Did she have to infuriate him even further? Panting with rage, Shin Nianma looked at her but remained quiet. His stomach started to grumble. Obviously, the little boy was really hungry. "You can always grill another one," she kindly suggested. "You are not allowed to steal it again." Gu Shijio studied him with her bright, sharp eyes and said, "You can try to think of a way to stop me from stealing." Shin Nianma pinched his mouth into a thin line and protested. "I will grill 2 skewers at a time, one for each of us. If you disagree with the offer, I will not grill anymore, and none of us will get any food." The little boy gave a good suggestion. Without any help, he could only cave into her demands. The little boy was promising and worthy of being taught. Gu Shijio nodded and agreed immediately, "Of course." Thus Shin Nianma continued to grill more food, this round 2 skewers at a time. Chapter 1906. Shin Nianma continued to be occupied with the cooking. The pair of skewer that he grilled looked almost identical, like twins. When he offered the meat to Gu Shijio, she took a look at the one in his other hand and asked for it. "I want yours, the one in your other hand." The little boy was utterly annoyed. Did she think that he might poison her? Shin Nianma did not argue with her. He gave her his skewer. The little boy had a decent table manner. Although he was famished, he did not eat voraciously or in a terrible hurry. He ate quickly but politely. He did not behave like an uncultured child. When he grows up, he would definitely charm all the ladies with his manners. While Gu Shijie was enjoying her meat, she could not help but sigh. How could a grown-up like her steal food from a young boy like him? She was convinced that she actually had zero boundaries. The boy continued to grill more meat as she lay on the tree. Every time, he would offer a skewer to Gu Shijie as promised. Sometimes, Gu Shijie would ask for the one in his other hand. Other times, she would just accept the one that he offered. The boy had a good temperament. He would offer her whichever skewer she asked for. Frankly speaking, the food that he grilled did not taste very good. For a gourmet like Gu Shijie, the food was considered bad, but she did not say anything to stagger his confidence. She finished all the food for the sake of his persisting effort. After satisfying her hunger, she was stung by her conscience and offered, "I have taken a large portion of your food. In return, I should offer you some help. Is there anything that I can help you with?" Shen Nianma cleaned his robes and stood proudly. "There is no need for that." Impressed by his determination, Gu Shijie continued, "Maybe I can help you to find the way to decipher the wizardry barrier?" Shen Nianma waved his hand in disagreement. "It is unnecessary. We shall go on separate paths from now on." He turned and ran away. Swiftly he disappeared in the woods. Perhaps he seemed to be alarmed by her tricks. She sincerely wished to offer her help by pointing out the exit to him, but maybe she had taken it a step too far earlier. While she was ready to leave, a sudden cramp in her abdomen stopped her from moving. It was bad. She was poisoned. Gu Shijie could not believe it. She was an expert in the use of poison. Basically, she could recognize all kinds of poison when she saw them. However, she fell miserably in his easy trick today. When did he put the poison in her food? She tried to trace the source of the poison in her body, and found out that it was relatively strong. Without her strong foundation in Kung Fu, she would be dead once the poison began to take effect. The little boy was indeed cruel. Gu Shijie was surprised, but not entirely intimidated by the poison. She seized the opportunity to sit down and meditate. Her level of cultivation was unfathomable. She could easily force the poison out of her system. However, just when she was about to sit down, she could sense a delicate fragrance that perfumed the air. The fragrance was extremely faint, which was mixed with the scent of trees and grass. Only someone with an extremely sensitive sense of smell would notice it. The delicate fragrance was poisonous as well. Apparently, the little boy was all prepared. If the edible poison was not enough to harm her, there was still the poisonous fragrance in the air. The poison that Shen Nianma used in the fragrance was nothing like what she had encountered before. Carefully, she turned and teleported immediately away from the poisonous air. The poisons that were used by Shen Nianma were rather strange, but nothing could possibly harm someone who was as powerful as Gu Shijie. With her current level of cultivation, all poisons would lose their effects in her system. She hid in an empty corner and used her spiritual power to cleanse her system. Soon, all the poison in her body was thoroughly excreted. She stood up and felt a little impressed. The little boy seemed to be really annoyed by her playful tricks. Also, he was very capable. She decided to try and test his true level of kung fu. She dug into her storage bag and released a big black python. It was the python that was captured by Gu Shijie while she was hiking the Great Mountains. Chapter 1907. Initially, Gu Shijie wanted to kill the python, but she hesitated. Every scale on its body had the color and luster of black jade, enhanced with the shape of a flower petal. As a result, she decided to keep it alive as a pet in her storage bag. The python could be very ruthless. It was a ferocious beast of level 8. Gusts of musty air accompanied its emergence. Gu Shijie picked up a piece of cloth from little Nianmo's robes, and swung it right in front of the python for it to recognize his scent. The python gave off a savage look in its eyes and left swiftly. Obviously, it was ready to look for trouble. Little Nianma was fighting with the black python. The black python was very swift in its moves, and was even capable of releasing poisonous gas. Because of one slow and careless move in the battle, little Nianma became entangled with the python. The python circled 2 rounds around his body and started to contract its muscles. Little Nianma was unable to breathe as he was entangled with the python. His face turned red as he struggled for air. As the snake continued to tighten itself around little Nianma, it became even more difficult for him to breathe. The lack of air consequently fogged his mind. Pale in the face, he felt as though his heart was about to explode, but the snake had no intention of releasing him at all. The snake intended to kill. The greatest risk in life could always exploit one's greatest potential. It was the same experience for little Nianma. He was eager to stay alive. All of a sudden, he picked up the body shrinking spell without even being taught it, and shrunk to a size that was much smaller than his original body. The python was unaware of his change, so he seized the window and lunged upward into the sky. Gu Shijiu quietly observed the battle from afar. She did not intend to kill Shin Nianma. She was only hoping to unlock his full potential. She was ready to help if his situation became any worse, but seeing his change of strategy gave her a mixed sense of surprise and relief, so she decided to let him help himself. Little Nianma had never encountered such a dangerous situation in his life before. When he finally managed to free himself from the entanglement, his eyes were completely red. The python was obviously triggered as well, seeing its own food run away. It pounced swiftly at Shin Nianma, in pursuit of its prey. It was not ready to let him go at all. Shin Nianma was ready to risk his life in the battle. He had acquired a series of excellent moves from his mother. With the unpredictable power and strength, nothing could ever capture him alive once he made use of the kung fu. Little Nianma decided to use the moves in his battle with the python. He circled the python with unpredictable, but dangerous steps. The python could barely touch him. A few moments later, little Nianma finally figured out the movements of the python. From there, he was able to turn his defense into a series of attacks at the python's tender spots. Half an hour later, he beheaded the python with a clean cut. Little Nianma panted heavily as he sat on the ground, staring blankly at the body of the python. His father would never intend to harm his life. The beasts that his father had released in the jungle, though fierce, would disappear instantaneously after he took their lives. They would never be able to harm his life, even though he was incapable of fighting them off. Only harmless animals were real here. To his surprise, the harmful, ferocious, and terribly poisonous black python was real as well. If he had moved any slower, he would have become its food. The dangerous beast must not have come from his father. Who would it be? Little Nianma thought about the mysterious man in the disturbing mask and clenched his fist tightly in frustration. Needless to say, the dangerous beast must have come from the mysterious man. Therefore, the mysterious man must still be alive, quietly watching him suffer from a distance. Little Nianma believed so, and became increasingly cautious about his surroundings. Out of anger, he kicked the python on the floor, which was already lifeless. Chapter 1908. Shin Nianmo's stomach started grumbling, and his hunger had driven him to slice the python open. The outer skin of the python was black, but its flesh was milky white, like high-quality cheese. Little Nianma sliced the tastiest sections of the python, and started grilling it with a gentle fire. This time, no one was there to steal his food away from him. The meat was very fresh and delicious, like nothing he had tasted before. He filled his stomach happily, and soon his physical strength had been completely recovered. With a blithe spirit, he continued his journey forward. After he left, Gu Shijiu finally revealed herself. She bent down to check the leftovers of the python, and shook her head in disapproval. She then turned and looked at the traces of little Nianma. The jade on her waist finally reacted with an iridescent sheen. It was pretty to look at. The messenger of heavenly law in her head once told her that the jade would react in 7-colored ray once it met its true master. Apparently, little Nianma had the possibilities of being the true master of heavenly law. You have to force him to his greatest potential. The genderless voice started to emerge again. Gu Shijiu hesitated. She had to challenge him even more. She closed her eyes and performed a spell in the air. Soon there was a loud, buzzing sound. A bunch of black creatures rushed into the woods. Shin Nianma had not even had his proper rest. He certainly did not expect that he would have to fight another bunch of eerie bats in such quick succession. These bats had a rather peculiar appearance with 2 rows of long, sharp teeth that resembled a saw. Little Nianma saw with his own eyes how instantly these bats turned a big, green rock into fine powder with their sharp teeth. Furthermore, there was not only one monster but a bunch of them. The bats surrounded little Nianma in a compact array. He felt intimidated by their presence, as though he was guilty of damaging their nest. There were too many bats, attacking him from all directions. One of the bats found a weakness in little Nianma's defense, and seized the chance to attack his chest. The bite corroded his clothes like strong acid. The instant erosion shocked little Nianma. He quickly tore his off the bitten piece and threw it away. He was left with only a belly band and a pair of underwear, revealing his fair and white little arms. He began to realize that he could not handle too many bats at the same time. Soon his body was scratched with many injuries. Blood started to ooze from the wounds on his arms while his underwear was completely dirted and slit into strips. It could hardly cover his private part anymore. Luckily, the bat's sharp wings, not their corrosive bites, slit his underwear. Otherwise, he would have to take off his underwear in order to prevent his skin from eroding. Gu Shijie sat casually on a huge branch and watched the battle from above. She felt that she had already done her best by driving him to his extreme. She gently knocked the piece of jade on her waist that was still shimmering in faint sheen. Honestly, I think that you have recognized the wrong master. How could your master still be a child? She sighed as she turned to look at the struggling child. She decided to stop, as she did not intend to harm him at all. Before she managed to recall the bats, she saw a rising golden ray, coming steadily from little Nianma's body. She could also see a 7-colored ray shimmering faintly in the background as well. The jade on her waist started to correspond with the 7-colored ray as well, striking powerful echoes across the distance. Even though the golden ray was only faintly visible, Gu Shijie could still see it clearly. Chapter 1909. Gu Shijie had initially planned to withdraw the bats. However, she hesitated now and was not sure what to do. There was a mixture of joy and disappointment in her eyes. At least she knew that the child was the true master of heavenly law. The golden ray from little Nianma's body managed to scare the eerie bats away. The light hit some of the bats and fell onto the floor with a piercing shriek. After twitching in exasperation, they died. Little Nianma could obviously feel the flow of an unknown force in his body, while he was struggling for survival. The faint golden ray then appeared. He saw how powerful the golden ray actually was, so he tried to feel the power in his body. However, the power soon disappeared, leaving no traces behind. He peeped and saw the mysterious black man on the tree whilst he was fighting. Driven by frustration, he clenched his fists tightly. Another trick. The mysterious man's fingers started to move, so he assumed that he or she must be ready to perform another spell. Little Nianma quickly turned and broke through the heavy encirclement of bats, launching his body upward like a bullet towards the direction of the mysterious man. He went full force, so he was incredibly fast. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of the mysterious man. Gu Shijie was unguarded, but her extraordinary level of kung fu allowed her to turn swiftly away and avoid the impact. While she was moving away from her spot, she noticed that there was a huge tree right behind her. She could easily avoid the impact, but if she did, he would bump his head straight into the tree instead. If he hit the tree, he would probably be severely injured, if not half dead. Therefore, Gu Shijie raised her arms and held little Nianma back at his waist to stop him from lunging forward. To her surprise, the child seemed to be waiting for the opportunity. Swiftly, he took advantage of her force and aimed directly at her body instead. She could no longer avoid the impact. The child went full force and struck her chest. She felt as though a hammer had hit her chest. Shakily, she was on the brink of collapsing. With trembling hands, she dragged little Nianma back and threw away. Swiftly, little Nianma took a turn in the air and landed steadily on another tree. He stared fixedly at the mysterious man with a surprised look and said, "You are a woman." When he hit her, he could feel her soft breasts. Gu Shijie did not answer. She surveyed him coldly and saw his private part. There was nothing much to see, actually. She commented, "You are naked." Little Nianma was surprised by her remark and looked down. only to realize that his broken underwear was now nowhere to be seen. He only had his belly band on, so his private part was completely flashed before his enemy's eyes. Though young, little Nianma was aware of the embarrassment. His face went crimson red, and he quickly hid away his lower body. He turned to look for the mysterious woman, but she was already gone. On the spot, there was a small piece of cloth. Little Nianma quickly retrieved the cloth and shook it briefly to make sure that it did not carry any poison. Then he wrapped it around himself. At the same time, he realized that the bats were gone. Little Nianma could finally heave a sigh of relief. In contrary to his expectation, the mysterious person turned out to be a woman. Who else would the mysterious woman be, if not Luojiaoyi? Why was she here to give him a hard time? Chapter 1910. She almost took his life. Little Nianma was really intrigued by her intentions, but he was sure that the woman meant mischief. The woman pulled off the look of a man. She even had a disturbing mask to cover up her face, so her true face must definitely be scary and ugly. Also, she must be a psycho to harbor evil intentions against a child. He thought about all the tricks that the woman had used on him and was frustrated. He could not help but curse at her. What an ugly woman you must be. Why do you keep following me? To his surprise, there was only the sound of wind brushing through the leaves, and nothing else. The mysterious woman did not show up again. She must have left. Little Nianma was relieved. Soon, he left the incident behind and continued his journey. However, he was surprised when he took a careful look at his surroundings. He had already found the way out before the chaos, but now, the surroundings had undergone remarkable changes. It was as if someone had purposely added new obstacles to the array to complicate it even further. Little Nianma was lost, and he had to look for his way out all over again. Utterly annoyed, little Nianma continued to curse the masked woman. It was only after a while that he became determined to accept the challenge again to find a way out. At the exit of the array formation, there was a rock. Gu Shijie stood tall, with her robe swaying wildly in the gusts of wind. She touched the mask gently and was amused. She observed the array formation and rubbed her temples in bewilderment. What a surprise, he really is the one. Now that I have found him, what should I do next? Have I completed my mission? She sighed helplessly. You have not. You need to hand him the box. You can only find out if he is really the master of heavenly law when he opens it. The voice in her head responded. Gu Shijie accepted her fate. She took a leap to the top of a tree and rested for a bit while waiting for the child's escape. When she exited the array formation, she made some alterations at the exit to make it more apparent. The bright child would definitely recognize it. However, she looked up in the sky and noticed that it was almost midnight. In a daze, she still could not believe that the adorable boy was actually the master of heavenly law. It was entirely out of her expectation. Deeply rooted in her subconscious, she had a mild aversion to the master of heavenly law. As the heavenly laws had completely manipulated her whole life, she could not help but criticize its master. She even had the idea of creating chaos for the master of heavenly law when she found him, to let him taste his own medicine. She had always thought that the master of heavenly law would be someone who was incredibly shrewd and deep. Surprisingly, he turned out to be so adorable. Even if he is the master of heavenly law, he will not be able to open the box before his first birthday. Are you sure that you want to wait for him here? The mysterious voice suggested. Gu Shijie was irritated. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? She turned to the sky and left swiftly. The mission that had been troubling Gu Shijie for 200 years had finally seen some progress. She was indeed relieved. Shinmiamo's birthday was now only 2 months away. Troubled by the mission, she had not been able to travel around the upper bound properly lately. Hence, she made it a point to explore the place again. Chapter 1911. Although Gu Shijie managed to travel the upper bound, she did quickly realize that it was rather mundane there. The only difference between the people was that the weakest people in the upper bound were at level 7 and above. They could be considered as the aboriginal inhabitants of the continent, but with the lowest power. As compared to those celestial beings that only idled around the whole day, or those that solely focused on cultivation all the time, Gushijou actually preferred to spend her time in the more ordinary part of society. The place was bustling with life with lively people. Gushijou liked the place better. Although the people were less sagacious than those in the city, they had everything they needed. There were the Alp, the hill, the lakes, the sea, the desert, and the land. There was everything. Gushijou did not expect to bump into Shenjuli's family while she was visiting one of the places in the upper bound. The place was known as Double-Winged Hill. The hill resembled the shape of two birds that were connected by their wings. It was also known as Lover's Hill. The view on top of the double-winged hill was terrific, but it was not entirely well known for its fancy scenery. Part of its popularity came from the people who chose to commit suicide for love. Every year, many lovers decided to come here and end their lives together when they were not allowed to be together due to many different reasons. According to legend, when lovers died together at the same spot, they would reincarnate and fall in love for eternity. Gushijou heard about the place, so she decided to check it out. To her surprise, she saw 3 other people standing on top of the hill when she was about to touch down from the clouds. There was Shen Nianma, along with another couple. The couple did not come for the view. They came to die. When they finally gathered enough courage to make the jump, Shen Nianma, who happened to be at the hill for fun, offered his help and pulled them back. The couple was utterly surprised. They knew that they were already in mid-air. The sea at the bottom of the hill had a special force of attraction that would pull everything down. Even if the couple could fly, they would not be able to turn back. The force would draw everything down like a magnet. When they leaped, they knew that they were falling fast. Even a thin person would weigh the same as a small hill under the strong forces of attraction. To their surprise, the child managed to pull them back to the ground. Despite looking very adorable, he was undoubtedly mighty. When Shen Nianma asked for the reason for their action, they did not hesitate to tell him, even though he was only a child. The couple was very well matched. Their parents agreed to their relationship as well. Their union was even blessed by heaven when they were granted with a pair of love bracelets. In other words, their marriage was made and blessed by heaven. Their love should have been a much-told story. Unfortunately, their relationship came to an end when both of them had a huge quarrel. Being young and aggressive, they decided to break off from their marriage, despite their parents' disapproval. They ruined the blissful union themselves. The love they had for one another was, after all, true. After a while, they regretted their decision and wanted to be back together again, but this time, their families disagreed. There was a tradition in the continent saying that once a marriage made by heaven was broken, the lovers would never be able to be together again. If they chose to be together regardless of all consequences, they would be doomed with great misfortunes. The lovers chose to disregard the tradition. They fell back in love, even under tremendous pressure. That was when their misfortunes started to unravel. Chapter 1912. Ever since their relationship reignited, both of their parents and families started to undergo many unfortunate events. The businessmen had to declare bankruptcy. The government officials were stripped of their ranks and banished into exile. The boy's sister went missing. The girl's brother became disabled due to an unfortunate accident. As a result, their parents became very strongly against their relationship. Their parents even threatened the lovers with their deaths just to force them apart. They had no other way out, so they came here to die for love. Both of them had certainly regarded Shen Nianma as their savior, so they became very hopeful after sharing their love story with him. Little celestial being, how can we break the curse? We only want to be together. Our matter should not affect anyone else. Shen Nianma was lost as well. He shook his head to dismiss their hope and answered, I do not know. Their remaining hope quickly dissipated. They looked at each other in the eyes and kneeled so suddenly. Both of them bowed to Shen Nianma, hoping that he could save them from their misfortunes. Frowningly, Shen Nianma knew that he had heard about the love bracelets, but he was not sure from when and where. He wanted to say something back, but a voice came interrupting him. Their matter has nothing more to be considered. Bewildered, the couple raised their heads to follow the voice. Above, Two beautiful people were floating indistinctly in the air. Their faces were dimly visible under the thin, foggy clouds, so the couple could not see their appearances. However, they knew that the duo must be unusually attractive. Shen Nianma looked at them with his big, bright eyes and called out, "Father! Mother!" Intrigued, the couple took another look at one another and bowed to the sky. If the duo in the air was really the parents of the little celestial being, they must be even more capable. The couple felt that there was finally hope, so they quickly bowed for assistance. Gu Shijiu hid in the air. She was surprised to see Shen Jiuli and his wife. Before, she was perplexed to find Shen Nianma traveling alone. It made more sense that he was actually there with his parents. She was deeply moved when she heard about the love bracelet. Suddenly, she felt an unknown sense of grief, as well. She had just realized the severe consequences of breaking off a marriage that was made in heaven. In that case, a marriage that was made by heaven was not necessarily a fortunate thing. Unless the lovers were bound with unconditional love. The lovers would only be blessed when their love for one another was persistent. Unlike the unfortunate couple that chose to break off from their destined marriage because of their sullenness, their destiny became more like a catastrophe. The couple kept bowing their heads desperately, so much so that their foreheads were starting to bleed. Ning Xiaoma felt that the couple deserved to be punished, but her recent mood also suggested that all lovers should be bound together happily. Moved by the couple's sincerity, she turned to look at Shen Jiuli for his approval. Shen Jiuli sighed. He knew the way but did not think that the couple would be able to achieve it. For the sake of his wife, he told them about it honestly. One should not ruin a marriage that is made by heaven. Once broken, it is considered over. Should you choose to stay together, misfortunes will soon uncover. However, if you are really determined to keep the relationship, there is a way. One of you has to die. Once reincarnated, you will meet again and resume your conjugal felicity. In other words, one of you has to sacrifice your life willingly for the other half to stay. Also, the one who chooses to die is required to do a good deed by saving the common people. The one who stays should wait patiently for his or her return. The curse will be broken when the dead one is brought back alive. The couple was stunned. The girl could not help but ask, what if the dead one reincarnates and forgets about the one who stays? Will all the wait be in vain? Shen Jiuli answered nonchalantly, if your love for one another is deeply rooted, you will feel the same for one another even without remembering anything. You will be back together as one after some time. Chapter 1913. The male partner frowned in disbelief. The idea sounds very abstract. How long should we wait for the reincarnation? One's life cannot be reincarnated immediately after death. It will take at least 100 years, Shen Jiuli answered. That is a long time. I am afraid the one who lives will not be able to wait for so long. Shen Jiuli gave them a sharp look and said, your lifespan will be at least 1,000 years. The wait of a century is not too much. The couple said nothing further. The separation for 100 years seemed unbearable. Moreover, one of them would lose all memories of the other half. Who knew what was going to happen in the future? They were both afraid to die or even to wait. Also, they were worried that all efforts would be fruitless. Shen Jiuli continued to give them another push. I am telling you now that your gender will be uncertain when either one of you gets reincarnated. The couple opened their eyes wide in shock. If the boy chose to die, he could be reincarnated as a girl. At the same time, the girl could become a boy as well. Either way, they would become homosexuals. In the end, the couple left with their broken hearts. None of them was willing to take the risk, so they had to break up. Ning Xiaoma watched as the couple slowly left and sighed. Their love for one another is not really intense after all. Shen Jiuli pulled his wife close and comforted her. Not many couples are like us, who are willing to face so many challenges just to be with one another. They only chose to die for love because of an impulse. Father, mother, was your marriage made in heaven as well? Shen Nianma asked while raising his head to look at the sky. Shen Jiuli denied. No. Shen Nianma became even more curious. So both of you had to endure so many challenges, only to realize that your marriage was not made by heaven? The heavenly law is unfair. Shinjuli gave him a long, thoughtful look. Yes, the heavenly law is unreasonable. Sometimes destinies are made irresponsibly. Your mother and I were once a celestial being and a demon. Both of us should be enemies, so our marriage was certainly not made in heaven. Shen Nianma frowned in bewilderment. Is the heavenly law a human? Or a god? The heavenly law is an order, but the one who makes the order is a god. Father, you are the guardian of the heavenly law. Have you seen him before? Shen Nianma was starting to get excited. Shinjuli responded casually, I certainly have. Is the person a man or a woman? How does he or she look like? Attractive? Shen Nianma was eager to know. Shinjuli sighed. He likes to take different embodiments and head to different worlds. There are many versions of him, some are ugly, and some are attractive. He could be a child like you too. He is indeed crazy. Ning Xuema could not help but comment. It was the first time for her to hear about the story of the heavenly law, so she was interested as well. Does he have a name? A name is nothing but a symbol. He has many names and many embodiments. He should have his own name, right? His surname is D. His guardians acknowledge him as Prince D. As for his name, he could have one, but he has not told anyone about it. He may have long forgotten about it, or is simply reluctant to tell. The man is strange indeed for making so many heavenly laws. Even you and I have to be involved. Ning Xuema seemed to bear a grudge against the master of heavenly law. Xuema, the heavenly law creates an order. Without an order, the world will fall into chaos. Moreover, the heavenly law has not only restricted you and I. He might have to suffer the same consequences as we do, Shinjili answered. Ning Xuema was not convinced. He made the heavenly law himself, so why would he be restricted? Chapter 1914. Amused, Shinjili answered with a smile. The one who creates the order certainly has to follow and carry out the laws as well. As the saying goes, all are equal before the law. He cannot simply place himself above the heavenly law. Otherwise, who would follow the order that he has made? The logic seemed to make sense. Ning Xuema decided to leave this topic of conversation behind. So she turned to her son instead and said, All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Nianma, where else do you want to go? Father and mother will go with you. Shin Nianma looked at his parents doubtfully. Mother, both of you have been acting weird lately. You have been with me almost every day. I have met many of your friends too. His parents' sudden change of attitude worried him, for they had been extremely kind to him lately. Shinjuli threw his son a look. Why? Isn't it a good thing? No, it is just that. It feels a little weird. I am doing this as a reward for your efforts. I know that you worked hard to overcome the challenges set for you, so I want you to be happy. If you think what I am doing for you is weird, that is fine. We can head home now. I have recently discovered a new array formation. Maybe you can help me test it out. Shen Nianma took a step backward and pulled Ning Xuemo's hand tightly. Mother, Nianma wants to see the wide seas and the ice cliffs, also the buildings of the sea world. He named a few places very quickly. Ning Xuema loved her son fondly, so she agreed to all of his requests. Shen Nianma pulled his mother away and was ready to go. Swiftly, Shinjuli pulled him back and demanded, Boy, I have not agreed to let you go. Shin Nianma winked at his father playfully with an adorable smile. You listen to mother all the time. If mother agrees, it means you agree too. Shinjuli did not know what to say. His son was right. However, he only listened to his wife because he loved her. The family left happily, hand in hand. Caught in a daze, Gu Shijie watched as the three of them disappeared into the clouds. She suspected that the Divine Lord's response must have an inner meaning. They seemed like they had something unbeknown to Shin Nianma. Instead of overthinking, Gu Shijie dismissed the suspicion immediately. Shin Nianma was their child. No matter how harsh the truth turns out to be, they surely would not harm him. They loved their child very much. She drew her attention to the surname of the Master of Heavenly Law, for she had just found out that his surname was D. What was his full name then? On the child's birthday, she would present the box to little Nianma to see if he can open it. If he really were the Master of Heavenly Law, Her mission would have reached a new milestone. From then on, she would have nothing to do with the child anymore. The Master of Heavenly Law had reincarnated as Shen Nianma. He must be carrying some missions with him, so she decided not to stay too close. She did not want to be sacrificed along his journey, so she preferred to stay out of trouble. 2 months went by very quickly. It was the day. It was finally the birthday of the son of a celestial being and a demon. Fantian Palace was crowded with guests who came to celebrate his birthday. Shen Jiuli and Ning Xuema had many friends from all over the continent. Almost everyone was present. Shen Nianma did not only receive many presents, but he had also found himself 10 different masters. All his masters were friends of Shen Jiuli. All were great men. Shen Jiuli had an indifferent temperament, which was the same for his friends too. Some of them were obsessed with chess, kung fu, array formation, and even alcohol. Most of the time, these men lived their lives in the most remote places within the 3 worlds. All of them were eminent from where they came. They appreciated little Nianmo's talent, despite having strict rules before receiving a disciple. Chapter 1915. When Shen Jiuli brought his son to visit them, they were all fairly impressed by the child. All of them wished to take him as their own disciple. Their wish came true. Joyfully, all of them had a present for little Nianma. One by one, they greeted Shen Jiuli and his wife with kind wishes. While the hall was bustling with noise, Shen Jiuli suddenly pointed his finger at the sky and demanded, "It is windy and foggy on the roof. My friend, why don't you come down?" A white figure flashed by and broke through the roof, leaving a large hole behind. A figure with green robes landed gracefully. The crowd was astonished. They had not expected to see anyone with the courage to eavesdrop on the roof of the Fantian Palace. The mysterious figure's face was covered with a disturbing mask. The person's robes were loose, so they could not tell if the intruder was a man or a woman. The sudden emergence had certainly created a stir. Ning Xuema narrowed her eyes while studying the mysterious intruder. "Are you passing by again?" The mysterious person was none other than Gu Shijio. She remained calm and composed. "No, I am here to give your son a present." She turned her hand around and presented a wooden box of delicate craftsmanship. The most dazzling part about the box was the emerald gemstone on the box, which was glittering and translucent. The present must be something valuable, judging from its physical appearance. Swiftly, she took a few steps forward and walked towards little Nianma. "Hey, this is for you. Happy birthday," she greeted while presenting the box to him. Little Nianma was nervous to see her again. His fingers started to tremble in anxiety. With a sharp eye, he carefully waited to see what else she was going to do to him. The box looked interesting, but little Nianma was not interested. He did not even pick it up. "Why? Are you afraid of it? Are you worried that a snake may suddenly appear?" The mysterious intruder commented jokingly. Ning Xuema looked at the mysterious intruder, then the box. "Are you goading him into taking the present? It is useless. He simply does not want it." Gu Zijia's eyes were filled with doubt. Then, she kept the box in her storage bag and responded delightfully. "Great, I do not really want to give it to you anyway. If you do not want it, it also means that it is not destined to be your possession." Shen Nianma did not know what to say. He was surprised by the mysterious intruder's sudden withdrawal, and felt as though he had missed his chance. All of a sudden, he became interested in the content of the box. What was really in there? Also, he suspected that the mysterious intruder was simply presenting the gift because his father had discovered her on the roof. Was she only trying to please his father? Shen Nianma felt as though he had fallen right into her trap. He was not fond of this intruder, so he certainly would not do as she wished. He thought about it for a moment, then gave her a warm smile. "Auntie, you have traveled so far. If you are really here to present the birthday gift, there is not a single reason why I should not take it. I was only joking. Why would I reject it?" Little Nianmo's voice was loud and firm, so everyone in the hall clearly heard him and was indeed astonished. Even Ning Xuema was taken by surprise. She carefully observed the mysterious person and could not believe that she was a woman. Gu Shijie did not expect that her gender would be uncovered so publicly. Moreover, she was annoyed when the child addressed her as his auntie while pulling tightly at her sleeve. Chapter 1916. Gu Shijie wanted to loosen her sleeve from his grip, and little Nianma seemed to have noticed her annoyance and let go automatically. He took a step back and gave her a charming smile. After that, he raised his hand, patiently waiting for the present. Gu Shijie was at a loss for words. She observed little Nianma's expression for a while and said scornfully, "If you have rejected it, it should no longer be yours. However, if you really want it, I will give you another chance. This present is rather unique. If you really want it, you have to prove to it that you deserve it." Soon, she presented the gift on her palm again. "If you want it, you have to open the box right now." Little Nianma agreed without hesitating. The mysterious woman then handed the box to him. The crowd was curious. All of them were eager to see what was in the box. The woman seemed to be playing a game with him. Ning Xuema noticed her trick, so she wanted to stand very close to her son to make sure he was safe. Shen Juli pulled her back instead and shook his head lightly in disapproval. Ning Xuema was not sure about her husband's intention, but she was certain that he knew what he was doing, so she stood still. However, her hands were ready to perform a series of powerful spells if anything were to happen to her son. The box was a very delicate item. Observing it carefully, it did not have an opening. Shen Nianma took the box and touched it everywhere. Soon he found a spot and pointed at it. Surprisingly, he managed to open the box. Gu Shijie clenched her fist in disbelief. He really could open it. It was really him. After years of tireless search from the upper bound to the underworld, she had finally found him. Little Nianma was unaware of Gu Xijia's waves of emotions. Like everyone else, he focused instead on the item in the box. Once opened, a flash of golden rays emerged strikingly. There was a golden snake resting in the box. The snake was not big, only about a few inches long. Its body was covered entirely in attractive golden scales. It also had 2 horns on its head. Whimsically, the snake shone in a faint golden light, like the infinite light of Buddha's aura. Also, the snake had really long eyelashes that were also golden. With its eyes closed, it looked rather refined and elegant. When the box opened, the snake suddenly opened its eyes. The color of its eyes was pitch black but glistening. The crowd was dazzled by its charm. Little Nianma focused his eyes on the golden snake. It somehow gave him a sense of familiarity. The eyes of the snake were black, but the charm that it possessed was golden. It was rather odd. Little Nianma's body reflected the golden ray, making him look as though he was glistening in gold too. Moreover, the light formed a circled aura at the back of his head. Ning Xuema was moved. Little Nianma looked as though he carried the light of Buddha. Chapter 1917. A 7-colored ray of light surrounded little Nianma. It was indeed a very catchy sight. The golden snake in the box seemed to imitate little Nianma. It blinked its eyes when little Nianma blinked his eyes. All of a sudden, the golden snake coiled around his wrist. Ning Xuema was panicked, and she almost launched a spell. Shen Juli immediately held her hand and sent her a directed audio message. "Don't move. The glass dragon will not hurt him." Glass dragon. That little snake was a glass dragon? Gu Shijie was also stunned to learn that the snake was actually a glass dragon. In her dream, she clearly saw a white-clothed man stuff a bunch of small pieces into the box. To her surprise, it was such a beautiful living object when little Nianma opened the box. Has she seen the dream clearly? Or was it an illusion? Her mind was filled with tons of questions. However, at least it was proved that she had found the right one since little Nianma managed to open the box. She finally completed her mission, and could now look forward to what was next. Little Nianma was initially traumatized by snakes. However, he did not fear the glass dragon. The scales of the glass dragon was as nice as jade, giving him a sense of coolness and comfort. The glass dragon shone and turned into a bracelet with a dragon pattern after coiling 3 circles around little Nianma's wrist. Little Nianma frowned. He wanted to get rid of the bracelet, but it was as if it was bonded to his skin. The result remained unchanged even though he tried very hard. Little Nianma was a little pissed. Hey, don't like the bracelet. I'm not a girl. Take it back. I don't want it. Unfortunately, he realized that the mystical lady was already gone. Everyone's eyes were on the glass dragon bracelet on little Nianmo's wrist. Hence, no one noticed when Gu Shijie left. Ning Xuema guessed that she must have teleported away. Little Nianmo received many birthday presents, but the one given by that strange lady was the weirdest among all, as he could not get rid of it no matter how hard he tried. What a strange way to mark his puberty. Initially he looked 3 to 4. In fact, he seemed to look 7 or 8 after donning the bracelet. Fortunately, his clothes could flexibly be changed according to his size. Otherwise, he might be naked at his own party. Right after the birthday party, Shen Nianma was taken away by the most powerful master in spell cultivation, and began his practice. This master might not be able to compete with Shen Jiuli in many aspects. However, he had recruited many disciples who were now amongst the best in all the realms. The most exciting news for little Nianma was the fact that his master had recruited a batch of new disciples who were almost the same age as him. He finally got companions. In order to be Shen Nianmo's first teacher, the master even brought along 2 of his disciples. There were a boy and a girl, and both of them were outstanding. 3 of them got along very well despite only meeting each other for a day. Chapter 1918. The 2 children were slightly older than Shen Nianma. One was 8 years old, and the other was 9. Certainly, both were the most intelligent and talented from their group. Initially, they were not willing to play with Shen Nianma as they thought he was too young, and would be very childish. Most importantly, they were jealous of Shen Nianmo's attractiveness, which far exceeded theirs. The little girl was beautiful, and everyone always complimented her. They said she was as beautiful as a fairy. However, she looked very ordinary when she was standing beside Shen Nianma. To their surprise, Shen Nianma had grown up so much right after the birthday party. Although he was not as tall as them, there was not much difference anymore. That made them curious, so they began to be closer to him. They would play the role of his senior to get his respect. Unfortunately, Shen Nianma soon realized that they could not really click as there were not many similarities shared among them. In fact, Shen Nianma found that he was far more knowledgeable than them. Not wanting to seem inferior, the little boy proposed a fight to prove their capabilities. Shen Nianma agreed. However, he had a condition. Whoever won the fight would be the boss, regardless of their age. All parties agreed and prepared to fight. Shen Nianma was very brutal to the little boy. His face was bruised in numerous places. The little girl suffered similar injuries as well. Although the little boy and girl managed to find their way to attack Shen Nianma together, he still managed to defeat them. As a result, the little boy and girl recognized Shen Nianma as their senior after half a day of battle. When spiritual master Yu Hang brought the 3 of them back to the clan, he was pissed off as he noticed that his 2 disciples could not stop referring to Shen Nianma as their senior. Gu Shijie felt extremely relieved as the mission that she had been working on for almost 200 years has finally been completed. She checked with the strange sound in her head if there was anything else that she had to do. However, it remained silent for a while. Only when Gu Shijie thought it would not respond, it said, "Just go with the flow." Gu Shijie heaved a sigh of relief and immediately inquired the question she put in her heart for 200 years. Is Huang Tu the former lord? How is he doing now? The sound remained silent for a moment before it continued. Huang Tu has immortalized, he will never be in this world again. Gu Shijie was at a loss for words and felt a chronic pain in her chest. She could not believe that the man who frequently appeared in her dream had disappeared entirely from this world. Initially, she still hoped that person would come to heaven. It was fine even if he did not become a mighty immortal, or he chose to become a hermit who had lost all his memories just like others. She hoped that was the reason she could not find him. Back in the past, the strange sound in her mind promised that it would tell her the truth after she completed her mission. Hence, she thought there was hope. Unfortunately, she was disappointed again after 200 years of effort. Gu Shijiu had been sitting on a tree for quite a while, to the extent the firmament stone thought she was turning into a fossil. Right at that moment she finally moved and said, "Little Tsong, let's go home." The firmament stone was also depressed, as it was hoping Huang Tu would still be alive. If that were the case, its master might still have the chance to reunite with him. However, their hope had utterly vanished now. Its master missed Huang Tu so much, even though she did not have any memory of him. If she could still remember him, she would probably have killed herself. In fact, Gu Shijiu could still stay 2 more months in heaven. However, nothing here could bring any interest to her anymore. Although she has been staying in heaven for quite some time, she felt she was a guest rather than a native. In fact, she did not have many friends up there, as she only interacted with a few people for the sake of the mission. The ones she cherished were Long Sai and Yunyanli. However, Long Sai has been very busy since he became a commander, while Yunyanli was still missing. Thus there was nothing she would miss anyway. Therefore, she sent a message to Long Sai and told him that she was leaving. Long Sai was surprised and asked why she intended to leave early. Gu Shijiu gave a rather simple explanation. She claimed that she had completed her mission and had no other reason to stay. Moreover, she had something else to do, as there was chaos on Earth which she needed to solve. Long Sai continued, "Shijiu, I'll wait for you to come half a year later. Let me be your host." Gu Shijiu only offered a smile, as she did not plan to come again. "I don't plan to come again." Gu Shijiu did not want Long Sai to wait hopelessly. Hence, she decided to come clean with him. "I probably will not come in the next few years." Long Sai remained silent for quite a while and asked, "Shijiu, do you not want me as your friend anymore?" Gu Shijiu sighed. "Why would I? You'll be my friend forever." "Then I'll wait for you to come." Gu Shijiu remained silent for a while and continued, "Let's see." She was not sure if she would still want to come here. After all, she did not miss this place, and there was nothing much she could do to help Long Sai anymore, since he had already gotten a good job. Gu Shijiu heard that Long Sai has been working very hard, and insisted on practicing his cultivation every day after his duty and hardly took any breaks. Gu Shijiu never knew that Long Sai was so aggressive, as he lived a very slow life back on Earth, and did not really care about his status when he was Long Shi. Perhaps he did not want to live shamefully with discrimination. After all, Long Sai was a person with pride. Perhaps in less than 10,000 years, he could already become a mighty immortal based on his talent and effort. It was good to have a goal. Gu Shijiu actually envied him, because one would not feel lonely when he had a goal to fight for. Gu Shijiu was already bored living for only 200 years. She shook her head at that thought and decided not to think about it. She returned to Earth right away. In fact, Long Sai was at a critical moment of his cultivation when he spoke to Gu Shijiu. He was idling as he looked at the directed audio spell after talking to her. Although he did not have any memories about his past, he still had a special feeling for Gu Shijiu. However, her status was too mighty. Hence, he did not confess. He was too embarrassed to show his love. "Shijiu, I do not care about the past, but I like you very much now. I'll work harder to improve myself, as I hope we can stand side by side together one day," he whispered as he looked at the directed audio spell. He continued his cultivation after heaving a sigh of relief. He had his own plan. He was having the status of a senior immortal at the moment. In less than 10,000 years, he could probably achieve the level of a mighty immortal based on his current cultivation progress. By that time, Gu Shijiu would immortalize, and she would ascend to heaven and become a mighty immortal without any memories. Thus he could pursue her and protect her. He still hoped he could be slightly stronger, so that she could be proud of him. He knew that she was looking for someone. He did not want her to keep someone else in her heart. He just wished that she would wait for him to be stronger. Gu Shijiu stayed on Earth for quite some time. She did not go to heaven for 5 years. She still had many friends on the Earth, such as Little Fox and her friends from Tianju Hall. Even her brother. Moreover, she had a lot of work to do, and that consumed quite a lot of her time. Back then, she knew what was she living for. She knew what she wanted, and she fought for it. However, things got a little boring once she had mastered everything. She did not even know what she wanted anymore, and no one understood her feeling. Perhaps she finally knew that Huang Tu was permanently gone, and so she surrendered to fate. Eventually, she seemed to have completely forgotten about him. Whenever she did think about him in her dreams, it would only put her into a depressive state. During those times, the firmament stone would try to comfort her. "Master, you can always find a better one. You should let him go. Perhaps you might find someone even better than him in the future." In fact, the mystical voice said before that Gu Shijiu would have a good relationship with Yin Yanli after 200 years. However, there was a critical change in heaven, and Yin Yanli was missing. Hence, the firmament stone was not sure if Yin Yanli could reunite with its master. The prince seemed nice and talented. He looked compatible with my master. Unfortunately, he went missing. The firmament stone tried to check with the mystical voice again to make sure what it had said was true. However, the mystical sound only replied, "Just go with the flow." The firmament stone was extremely pissed off. It could not stop cursing the mystical voice as it did not keep its promise. Anxiously, the voice said, "She has unintentionally changed her destiny. Hence, she is free to control her own destiny." The firmament stone was a little confused. When did this happen? The mystical voice remained silent. The firmament stone went straight to the point. "Do you mean she can arrange her own destiny in the future? Including her marriage? Not bad." The mystical voice was impressed. The firmament stone heaved a sigh of relief, but he still thought about Yin Yanli. "How about Yin Yanli? Will he still come to Earth? When your master went to heaven, Yin Yanli's destiny changed. He might not come to the Earth anymore." The firmament stone finally caught a critical point. "Is he still in heaven?" The mystical voice did not speak anymore. However, the firmament stone guessed that it was correct. It still wished to match its master and Yin Yanli since Di Fui was gone. Therefore, the firmament stone began to talk about Yin Yanli more often, and hinted to Gu Shijiu that he was still in heaven. He was probably trapped somewhere and still waiting for someone to rescue him. Coincidentally, the muscle and Luwu had achieved a level 10 spiritual power, and also escaped from the heavenly challenge. However, they could not leave everything behind. Hence, they did not choose to ascend to heaven. Instead, they often asked Gu Shijiu to bring them along to heaven when she visited. Gu Shijiu paid a visit to heaven again after 5 years. There was a huge change up there since her last visit. The new Emperor Immortal had successfully established his empire, and everything was managed orderly. The 3 realms were in harmony, and the community even set up a market in the 5th heaven, so that the residents from the 3 realms could do some business there. It was a new highlight. Gu Shijiu brought the muscle and Lu Wu to the market for a feast. Apparently, the restaurant was the best place to collect information as she heard big news that someone was missing when they had their meal. There were many kids with high spiritual power from all the 3 realms missing in the last 2 years. All were of different ages. The youngest was between 7 to 8 years old while the oldest was about 17 years old. All of them were geniuses, and they were the treasures of each clan. To everyone's surprise, they had gone missing and never returned. The situation was extremely worrying. Gu Shijiu heard it from 3 teenagers who looked around 14 to 15 years old. One of the teenagers looked pretty in a light red dress while the other 2 boys were in light red robes. One seemed very energetic, and the other looked calm and careful. Both were very charming. Gu Shijiu did not know any of them, but she could recognize their uniform. They were the disciples of spiritual master Yuhang, and they should be at the level of middle immortals based on the color of their robes. Gu Shijiu had something in mind. She remembered that when she attended little Niamo's birthday party, he was recruited by spiritual master Yuhang, and he was going to be taken under his wings for the first decade. She guessed Shen Niema was still learning under spiritual master Yuhang at the moment, and wondered how was he doing. Suddenly, she smiled as she seemed to recall Shen Niemo's charming appearance. 5 years have passed. The little boy should be 6 years old by now. Since he grew faster than normal, perhaps he looked like a teenager now? Anyway, she was sure that he would look charming. Gu Shijiu liked that little boy. However, she felt uneasy when she remembered that he was the reincarnation of the master of the heavenly law. After all, the heavenly law was the main culprit of all the suffering she had gone through. including the vanishing of her beloved. Eldest senior has gone out to investigate the case. It's already 2 days, and he has yet to return. I'm worried about him. The teenager with a round face said. Don't worry, eldest senior is very intelligent. So far no one could beat him. I'm sure he can solve the problem, and will return safely. The young lady had very high confidence in her eldest senior, as her eyes were filled with admiration. Why not we report it to master? We can't bear to lose eldest senior. What if he is missing? You know that he is still quite young. The calm boy spoke his mind. Impossible. Eldest senior will not go missing. The girl started exclaimed. Even if everyone is missing, he won't be. He is the most powerful one. The calm boy decided to be silent. Let's wait a little longer. After all, we will be punished if master knows about it, as we secretly sneaked out without his permission. Moreover, eldest senior told us to wait for him for 3 days. Today is just the 2nd day. Perhaps he will come later. The other boy tried to ease the situation. The girl pursed her lips. He has never let us down. He will definitely come back. Gu Shijio shook her head as she listened to their conversation. Apparently, their eldest senior sounded like someone with prestige who was admired by many. Gu Shijio wondered about the identity of this person as well. However, he should be quite young, according to his juniors. Perhaps he was only 17 or 18. After all, the eldest missing kid was only 17. How powerful could a kid be at 17 or 18? Why don't we try to look for them? The calm boy suggested. No way. Eldest senior said that the kidnapper is at least as strong as a senior immortal. He is powerful. It doesn't help even if we go. We can't just sit here and do nothing, right? Of course. In fact, we have already acted against eldest senior's wishes. He told us to wait in the hotel for 3 days and don't go anywhere. However, we left the hotel and even came to the market. It's boring to stay in the hotel every day. Moreover, we are just here for our meals. The 3 of them were having an aggressive debate. In fact, the guests at the other tables were also talking about the same incident. However, the 3 teenagers seemed to carry a unique aura with them. Hence, they attracted a lot of attention as they managed to achieve the power of middle immortals at such a young age. Gu Shijio was drinking alone while listening to their conversation, and also observing everyone's expression. Swiftly, she smiled as she took a sip of the wine. It was very late at night. The 3 disciples of spiritual master Yuhang had fallen asleep in 2 separate rooms in the hotel. Although they were yet to be adults, they entered the puberty cycle, and understood the difference between males and females. Therefore, they were separated into 2 rooms when they rested. The 2 boys shared the same room, while the girl had her own room. Luckily, their rooms were just next to each other. Thus, they could take care of each other as all of them could be alerted if something happened in either room. The 3 of them were extremely alert as many kids had gone missing. Therefore, they even set up some mechanisms in the room before they went to bed. The entire hotel was very quiet as most of the guests had gone to bed. Suddenly, there was light at the corridor, and 2 men appeared. These 2 people were wearing black masks and clad in black, revealing only their bright pairs of eyes. They walked to the front of the doors of the 3 children's rooms. It was evident that they had come here before through the familiarity of their movements. They listened for any movements inside the room. It seemed that the children were breathing softly and were deep in their sleep. They nodded to each other. A tiny person in scarlet red emerged from one of their palms and waggled. It was a person that was entirely colored in vermilion, and was only 1 inch in height. That person tapped on the body of the tiny person, and it flew inside the room through the cracks of the door. It gently pushed open the door from the inside, until a small crack could be seen. The door had a set of bells attached to its knob from the inside that would ring when anyone pushed it, but it did not make a single sound. That person cut the threads of the bells with his fingers like a pair of scissors, causing them to fall into his palms without a sound. With a light grip of his palm, the bells became nothing more than dust. He then surged straight to the bed. After a moment, he came out with a black sack. His partner, who was on the lookout for him, saw his elation and asked, "That happy?" "Of course. When have I not been happy while doing these things?" This brat had some sense and almost screamed, but I shut her up in time. He was quite proud of himself. "Should we grab the other 2 kids as well?" "Sure. These 3 children are of a high aptitude and would be of good use to master." "Great, let's get on it then. The other 2 have a higher sense of vigilance, so make sure that they don't shout or alert anyone." The 2 people had extremely proficient abilities and were adept at this line of work. The other 2 children were indeed more vigilant than the girl, but they were sedated and thrown into the black bag as well before they could scream. And thus the 3 children with the external abilities of middle immortals were kidnapped without alerting anyone. In a moment, the 3 children were tossed inside a black carriage that was pulled up into the air by a black Pegasus. It was evident that the black carriage was specially made. As it rose to the sky, it became hidden within the clouds and soon disappeared from sight. The girl was named Qing Luo, and the round-faced boy Hung Qing. The calm and quiet boy was Si Qing. Among the 3 children, Si Qing was the most skilled. It was he who almost succeeded in screaming as he was being kidnapped. Although he was sedated and paralyzed through the sealing of one of his acupuncture points, it did not go into full effect. He was still conscious but could not move his body. And that's precisely why he was afraid. He was trapped inside the bag, and could not see anything but pitch-black darkness. He only heard the 2 people conversing. He could tell from their conversation that he and his fellow students were kidnapped to be sent to some master's training, and something about their spiritual powers being pure and suitable for their master's consumption for the efficiency of his refinement. They spoke as though the 3 of them were not people but food. Si Qing was frozen with fear. He finally knew what happened to the missing children as well. They must have encountered a bad end. He tried to scream and struggle but remained paralyzed in despair. The 3 of them were initially very obedient but decided to run out and play. Who knew that they would encounter such a situation that might potentially end their lives? Si Qing sweated in fear as he could not think of any way to extricate himself. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.